Okay, we're going to get right on with it. Want to introduce Scott Klusendorf. He is the president of Life Training Institute. He has traveled throughout the United States and Canada, training pro-life advocates to persuasively defend their views in the public square. He contends that the pro-life message can compete in the marketplace of ideas if properly understood and articulated. He's the author of The Case for Life, Equipping Christians to Engage the Culture, which is available here for sale after the rally. He's a graduate of UCLA with honors and holds a master's degree in Christian apologetics from Biola University. He and his wife Stephanie celebrate 20 years of marriage this year, and they have 3 sons and 1 daughter. And Scott will be leaving right after he speaks because he has the opportunity to catch an earlier flight home, and I think hopefully he'll be able to do that. So, Scott?
Of course, if I don't make that flight, I can't think of a finer person to miss a flight for than Debbie. I mean, that's worth it. About 9 months ago, I had my youngest son, Michael, with me in London, England. And we had gone over there to help, among other folks, the 40 Days for Life that it organized in London. And you'll be happy to know that in Europe, there is rising up a pro-life movement that is very, very committed. And if you've heard stories that the game is over in Western Europe on the abortion front, may I just say that the reports of our demise are a little bit premature, because I have met some folks who are in no way ready to surrender this fight. And I've gone over there with my son Michael to do some speaking on pro-life, and of course, being the Anglophile that I am, anytime I can catch a flight to Heathrow, I'm on it. And we were over there, and we had a day of touring around London, and I said to Michael, what do you want to do the next day? And he said, let's go see some World War II stuff. So we went to the Imperial War Museum, which is on the south bank of the Thames River. And when you go to the Imperial War Museum, you can see Spitfire planes on the ceiling, you can see tanks from World War II, you can see all the kind of weaponry that was used during the First and Second World Wars. And as we were standing outside waiting to go in, I noticed on the wall, on the windows leading into the Imperial War Museum, they had a whole bunch of pictures of the evacuation of children from London during the Blitz. For those of you that don't know what happened is, London was bombed heavily in 1940, and to save children, they put them on trains and literally took them out into the country, and families in the countryside adopted the children while they waited for the bombing of London to end. And I was pointing to Michael at one scene in particular where there's this line of about 12 children, all with their little numbers on them, and they're all getting ready to get on the train at Victoria Station to leave for the countryside. And as I was pointing to that picture and explaining to Michael what had gone on, an elderly woman, who I'm guessing was in her 80s, came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder. And she said, I'm one of those children. Now, she was not one of the children in the exact picture we were looking at, but she was one of those children who got sent out on the train. And of course, I'm like, whoa, living history, 15-year-old son, this is a God moment. I said, what happened? She said, well, they started bombing London, and my parents put me on the train. And I went off to the country, and I never saw them again. I said, wait a minute, what happened? She said they were both killed in a bombing raid 10 days after I was sent out. I said, do you mind if I ask what happened to you? She said, well, the family that took me in adopted me, and I became their daughter, and I had a very good life. I about lost it. The combination of being a history buff myself, knowing what the British people went through during that Blitz, their die-hard attitude that said, we will never surrender no matter what, and then hearing a personal story and having my 15-year-old son right there to see it, priceless. But when I asked her, I said, well, was it strange for them to adopt you? I mean, did they just do it? She said they didn't think twice about it. They just, and here's the word she used, she said they just stepped up and did it. And as I look at you today, standing out here freezing your butts off, we might as well be honest, right? You've stepped up, and I'm glad you have. Because I have news for you, men and women. The pro-life movement is going to have to step up big time. The days of passively taking this issue on are done. If the last election didn't prove that to you, well, it's time for your wake-up call. Here is the very, very sobering news. There is no sleeping giant. We've been told for decades that there is a large number of people who agree with us. We just need to get them involved. I have news for you. There is no large number of people who agree with us. The majority of Americans disagree with us, and they show it in the way they vote. They show it in the way they approach the pro-life issue. There isn't a sleeping giant that we need to wake up. There is no giant. And that means this: we've got to step up our efforts and create one. It's a whole new day, folks. And I want to talk to you about 3 things we all need to be willing to do to step up. Because we are very much in a situation like Britain was in 1940, where they were facing ultimate annihilation, but the heart and soul of that nation stepped up and said, we're not surrendering, we're not quitting, we're not going away, we're going to fight. And I want to talk for a few minutes about 3 ways we need to step up our fight. The first thing we need to do is, every one of you here today, I don't care what you've thought about yourself in days past, every one of you today from this moment forward is now a pro-life apologist. Let me tell you what an apologist does. An apologist doesn't run around saying he's sorry all the time. That's what a husband does. A pro-life apologist does something different. All the guys are going, yeah, that's it. I got it. Women self-righteously going, yeah, preach it, bro. I'll get you ladies in a moment. Here's what a pro-life apologist does. You argue for the pro-life view. By arguing, I don't mean you insult people, but you need to know how to make a case for the pro-life view in 2 minutes or less. That's right. So what are you going to do if you got 2 minutes? Reporters shown up, shove that mic in your face. Here's what you're going to say. The science of embryology establishes from the earliest stages of development that each of us was a distinct, living, and whole human being. Philosophy tells us that there's no essential difference between that embryo you once were and the adult that you are today that justifies killing you at that earlier stage. Differences of size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency are not good reasons for saying you could be killed then but not now. Now, how long did that take me to say? About a minute, minute and a half? Folks, you've got to memorize that. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. There's some books over there called The Case for Life. I don't know who the author is, but I heard he's a heretic, and he's speaking to you today. That book over there called The Case for Life that the 40 Days people have available, every one of you should leave with one of those books. That's right, shell out the money. The money's going to go to them to reimburse them for the books they bought. Get one of those. That little argument I just gave you is in there, along with about 200 pages of other stuff you can use to simplify your pro-life approach to people. We're all pro-life apologists now. You can't just leave it to the professionals. You can't just say, oh, that's Rich Santorum's job, or that's some priest's job, that's Father Pavone's job. No, it's your job. We all step up, just like that family stepped up to adopt that woman that I talked to. Second thing we've got to do, we not only have to step up and become apologists, we have to step up and be people who are willing to take heat. And you being here today suggests you're that kind of person. We're not going to be liked for a long time. It's going to be decades before we're liked. And this fight is not going away in 6 years. I cringe when I hear people say to pro-life young people, you're the generation that's going to end abortion. No, they're not, barring an extraordinary miracle of God. We've got a long way to go on this. The culture is deeply entrenched in the abortion mindset. You're not going to get rid of that overnight. So we're going to have to commit ourselves to the long haul, and we're going to have to be willing to dig in and take heat for what we believe. Let me give you an example of someone who did that. A 15-year-old girl I was told about wrote a report. Her dad told me about this. He said, my daughter, Summer, wrote a report for her school where she argued for the pro-life view. She argued from science that the unborn are human. She argued from philosophy that they're valuable human beings who differ from us in ways that don't justify killing them. And then what she did is she turned her paper in very well footnoted, with her sources cited, and she did exactly what the teacher wanted her to do, write an argumentative essay. But there was a problem. The teacher wasn't happy with the position that Summer White took in her essay. And so the teacher sent the paper back with a 0. Now wait a minute, Summer's going, I'm a 4.0 GPA. I got straight A's. What's this 0 nonsense? The teacher said, you said abortion was wrong. You said your position was true in the paper. That's just your personal view. And you set it up as if it were the right way to think about it. Summer went to the principal and said, this won't stand. I'm a good student here, and I'm not going to take this. By the way, it helps that her dad is a Christian apologist who doesn't take gruff from people, and so that kind of rubbed off on her. She went back. Principal looked at her paper, said, I'll get back to you tomorrow. He did. And he said, I've met with your teacher, I've met with the faculty, we've come to a solution. All you have to do is revise your paper and say that it's your personal opinion that abortion is wrong, and you'll get a grade. Do you think Summer took that deal?
No.
Not in a billion years. Here's what she wrote on her blog. Given a choice between making my teacher happy, who will be dead and gone soon enough, and making my God happy, who I am going to live with for eternity, you can take my 4.0 GPA and you can have it. You know what I call that, men and women? Guts. That's called guts. And we need guts for the long haul. And that means we can't just all go run away when an election doesn't go our way. There's probably going to be a few more that don't go our way. We're going to have to fight for the long haul. This is trench warfare. You've got to equip yourself to engage. You've got to know how to make your pro-life case. And I hope you'll join us in doing that. Third thing you got to do. You're going to have to encourage your friends who aren't here today to be here the next time. And that means you've got to be willing to bug, call, Facebook, email, tweet them, do whatever it takes to get them here. Why is 40 Days for Life so important? I'll tell you why it's so important. When David thought this up, he did something and provided a missing link that had been missing in the pro-life movement. And that is an entry-level step people can take to step up and be involved in this issue and make a difference in a way that doesn't seem overwhelmingly impossible for them to embrace. And 40 Days for Life is basically asking people, look, will you show up for an hour at a kickoff rally? Will you show up at a closing rally? Will you show up to pray for an hour? That's stuff we can do. And I do think that though the culture is not with us, there are large numbers of Protestant and Catholic Christians who would step up, but they need us to be a little more firm in encouraging them to do it. And so here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to start worrying less about being polite and worrying a little more about swelling our numbers. And yeah, there will be some people who might think, oh, he's nagging me. Now be nice about it. Don't threaten the person, you know. Don't tell them you're going to come over and teepee their car if they don't show up or something like that. But I mean, bug them a little bit. And you know what happens? When people get a little bit of encouragement to show up, things change. You notice that God likes what I'm saying? The sun just came out and it got warmer? If you think I'm kidding about encouraging people to be involved, making a difference, let me close by sharing my own story. In 1990, I was an associate minister at an evangelical church in Los Angeles, and there was a local pregnancy center director who I had struck up a relationship with and knew her and knew friends of hers, and I was always pro-life. There was never a time in my life I was not pro-life. But I sure didn't do much to indicate that I was pro-life. I was like all those pro-life people you know that aren't here today. That was me. And this very polite, very timid, very sweet pregnancy center director kept giving me books to look at and kept inviting me to come to things. And one day she said, listen, we're going to have a speaker come and talk about pro-life, and he's going to be speaking specifically to pastors. would you come? I thought, okay, sure, I'll go. And I thought, okay, this will be good. Whenever we did pastors' gatherings in my area, we'd get 100 guys out. It was pretty easy. Who didn't want a free breakfast on Saturday morning? I showed up and there were 4 other pastors there. And the speaker, undeterred, a former member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, a man who had been in the Reagan administration in the Justice Department, a guy by the name of Greg Cunningham, gave a presentation on abortion that absolutely blew my mind. He was intelligent, he was intellectual, that appealed to me, but then he did something that I had never experienced before. He showed a short videotape depicting abortion, one of the most graphic things you'd ever see. I sat there watching that videotape and I wept because I realized that though I said I opposed abortion, I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. And I was no different than the parable of the priest and the Levite in the Good Samaritan story, who passed by on the other side of the road, and though they may have felt pity for the beating victim, they didn't act like they felt pity. And Christ castigated them for it. And that day my life changed. I bought a copy of that VHS tape that he showed. VHS tapes were these rectangular things that were long, rectangular. I took it home, put it in the VCR, and showed it to my wife. And she said, I don't know what God's doing in your life, but I'm with you. 6 months later, with the blessing of my church, I'm still a licensed minister. If you need anybody to marry and bury today, I'm here. With the blessing of my church, I resigned to work full-time training pro-life advocates how to make a case for life in the public square. I was one of those people that hadn't stepped up. But because a pro-life apologist interrupted life, here I am today. I'm challenging you to be people who interrupt. Do it graciously, but be persistent. Sweet little Lois had a nice smile and a very unthreatening personality, but she was relentless. And here I am. And you know what? God's going to use you to put some people in the game to step up. Go out there and give them heaven. God bless you guys as you're here.